Hello, friends. Welcome to this 17th webinar on the Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly P. Hall. So we've switched over to the Zoom platform. It looks like at least those who are here have made their way successfully. Hopefully nobody has been left in some kind of in-between space, but looks like we have a pretty full attendance. So I'm hoping that everybody made it over. Very short tutorial on this. It's pretty much the same. The only, as with our other platform, GoToWebinar, but you have a video panel which you can control. It's not something we control. So you want to choose at the very top of that panel. If you scroll over it with your cursor, you get 4 choices, and starting from left and going to the right. You want to choose either the first or second choice, the line or the little square. You don't want to choose to see all participants. And the reason being, I mean, it's fine with me if you were to click that, but it will obscure the screen. And you won't be able to see the slides and the reading. So if you click one of the 2 boxes to the far left up at the top of that little video panel, then you'll be fine. It'll take up a minimum of real estate. Otherwise, it's pretty much as before. And we'll just, if there's problems that come up as we go along, we'll deal with it when we come across them. Okay, so as usual, this webinar series is available on Makara under the subheadings Moria Federation webinars, then webinar series in progress as shown here. And also on YouTube, you can find previous episodes of both Secret Teachings and the Secret Doctrine on YouTube. Just do a search for Francis Donald Secret Teachings or Secret Doctrine and it'll pull it right up. All right, then. Last month, we began our study of the Greek mysteries at Eleusis, which MPH calls the Eleusinian Mysteries, which were divided into the lesser and greater mysteries, and which we'll take up in that order. Since Thomas Taylor has some of the more profound insights on these mysteries, we'll be quoting him throughout this section, starting with this passage from the introduction to his book, Eleusinian and Bacchic Mysteries. So the very first reader on the new platform, if we could get a BL, if you could find a reader, please.
Yes, actually, I'm going to start with this myself.
Okay.
It was required of all candidates that they should be first admitted at the Mikra or Lesser Mysteries of Egra by the process of fasting called purification, after which they were styled Mystae or initiates. A year later, they might enter the higher degree. In this, they learned the aperhita, or secret meaning of the rites, and were thenceforth denominated ephori or epopto. To some of the interior mysteries, however, only a very select number obtained admission. From these were taken all the mysteries of holy rites. The Hierophant who presided was bound to celibacy and required to devote his entire life to his sacred office. He had 3 assistants, the torchbearer, the kerux or crier, and the minister at the altar. There were also a Basilius or king, who was an archon of Athens, 4 curators elected by suffrage, and 10 to offer sacrifices.
Thank you, BL. As one correction in the middle there, these graduates of this school, all the ministers were taken, and then you have this further description of the Hierophant and the character crier. So thank you. So apropos to the lesser mysteries described here, we have the J.A. Knapp illustration, which serves as the frontispiece for this chapter, along with the accompanying text entitled An Initiation Ceremony in the Eleusinian Mysteries. Now, as we read this passage, keep in mind that the author of, whose name was Weiss, his description of this ceremony is completely speculative. This is because these were secrets of participation and were never written down. So it's just a fanciful understanding. Nonetheless, it's very colorful, and it's what's included in the text. So if we could get a reader.
Okay, Yvonne, I'm going to, all right, I've allowed you to talk and you need to unmute yourself. There you go.
Okay, an initiation ceremony in the Eleusinian Mysteries. The candidate and his aged initiator are here shown, standing on the brink of a chasm, dividing the world of the living from that of the dead, and through which stream the shades of the departed. On the farther side of the chasm, Hades, the god of the underworld, sits on his golden throne, surrounded by the emblems of death and attended by Cerberus, the three-headed dog, guardian of the gates of death. Above the yawning cleft hovers the figure of Ceres, carrying the two torches which light her way through the gloom of the netherworld. She pleads for the liberation of her daughter, Persephone, whom Hades has abducted and would force to become his queen. John A. Weiss thus describes the ritual of Eleusina. Soon the thunder rolled, lightning flashed, strange and fearful objects appeared, and the place seemed to shake and be on fire. Hideous specters glided through the building, moaning and sighing. Frightful noises and howlings were heard. Mysterious apparitions, representing the messengers of the infernal deities, anguish, madness, famine, disease, and death, flew around. As the trembling crowd of the novices advanced amid this fearful spectacle, representing the torments of this life and those of Tartarus, they heard the solemn voice of the Hierophant explaining them and exhibiting his symbols of supreme deity, but which added to the horrors of the scene, when suddenly a serene light and objects of bliss appeared and opened an Elysium to the initiated Eleusinian phalanx, who had in a short time and space experienced the miseries of earth, the tortures of Tartarus, and the happiness of Elysium. See the obelisk in Freemasonry.
Okay, thank you. Any thoughts or questions about this passage, which appears, underneath this illustration in the big book? Here's John Weiss's obelisk in Freemasonry, which this quote came from. Again, keep in mind that this, to my mind, fanciful account of the Lesser Mysteries comes from the imagination of a 19th century author. Since the participants in the mysteries were sworn to secrecy, what actually took place in the Eleusinian sanctuary was known only to them. Okay, let's take a look at the three main players in this depiction of the Lesser Mysteries. The realm of the dead is overseen by Pluto, who is identical, or Hades, who is identical with Serapis, Minos, the Hindu Yama, all of these of which we've taken a look at. And could we get a reader for this section, including the description of the illustration there at the bottom right?
Okay, Joe, can you read that for us, please?
In the simplicity of the primitive religion, Pluto and Proserpina were considered merely as the deities of death presiding over the infernal regions, and being thought wholly inflexible and inexorable, were neither honored with any rites of worship nor addressed in any forms of supplication. But in the mystic system, they became personifications of the active and passive modifications of the pervading spirit concentrated in the earth. Pluto was represented with the polos or disc on his head, like Venus and Isis, and in the character of Serapis with the patera of libation or distributor of the waters in one hand and the cornucopia signifying its result in the other. His name Pluto or Plutus signifies the same as this latter symbol and appears to have arisen from the mystic worship. His ancient title having been Ides or Aphides, signifying the invisible, which the Attics corrupted to Hades. An 18th century engraving depicting the underworld of Greek mythology, showing Charon, the ferryman in his boat, Cerberus, the three-headed dog guarding the entrance, and Hades, ruler of the underworld, and his wife Persephone. The body of water is the river Styx. And apologies if there was noise in the background.
Oh, no problem.
Okay, a little guy upstairs is in quarantine, so I hear him quite frequently.
Oh, okay. Well, we're all friends here, so there may be some background noise occasionally. Any thoughts or questions about this? Persephone, whom so I've highlighted here, whom Pluto abducts and who is the main focus of the Lesser Mysteries. Identification with Persephone is the focus of the Lesser Mysteries. Aspires, according to Greek mythology, to a second death, not to a second birth, though from our point of view, it's like that, but to what they call the second death, which is actually a rebirth by which he will re-merge with Hermes, the quote, fountainhead of the sun. Proserpina, or Proserpine, used here is the Roman name for Persephone. Could we get a reader for this, please?
Yes. Let me see. Karen, can you read that for us, please?
Oh, okay. I don't see the whole text though.
You don't?
I don't see the very bottom part. No.
I wonder, could we stop for a second and take a poll? I want to make sure this isn't. Are you on your normal computer?
No, I'm not, because my normal computer is not working. So I'm on my laptop, which is old.
Okay, it may have to do, it probably has to do with the resolution you've chosen. You probably have a lower resolution screen and therefore it's only showing a portion. That's
I
my
see
guess.
most of it. Yeah, I can't see the end line, so I don't know how long it is.
Okay, well, we'll fix that for you, but I want to just see if there's anyone else that is having this. You could just raise your hand, I guess is the way, not to speak, but just to take a kind of toll. So we got 2 so far, 3.
No, actually, they're saying that there's an issue with unmute. You're not going to see unmute as an attendee ever unless we allow you to talk.
Right. I
Then
have
you'll
to
get to-
unmute you. I have to unmute you when I get ready to call on you.
The view issue that Karen is dealing with is potentially because she's literally on a screen that's 640 by 480 or something like that.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
It's
Yeah,
going to be too small to.
right. Is there? But this, let's just.
She would have to change her resolution on her screen if she can.
Yeah, probably can't if it's real old. So at this point, let's just focus on this one issue, which is is there anyone else who cannot see all of the text?
The
Nobody?
bottom part of it says mythological astronomy.
Yeah, that's the last line. You should see a line around the text. Is there anybody else? Okay, I think it's probably a fairly rare condition. So
We have two hands up. Tia and Veronica, does that mean, and Jeremy, does that mean you guys can't see the bottom either? Now I can see it. Tia says, okay. In full screen, I do not see it. Out of full screen, I can see it all. So it might be a difference of, you know, do the view up at the top, the view options, and say, change that, or put the speaker video side by side so that it might raise up the those are
So
the
what I don't know, what one of them is fit to window, 50%, 100%. So what are you suggesting that I might do?
well, try it. Try a lesser percentage and see if that pops it in for you.
and
You mean
if
like,
50, start with 50 or 75 or something. And
oh,
see-
well,
see-
yes, I can see it. It's smaller.
Yeah. So what you want to do is use the biggest percentage you have available that allows you to see the whole thing.
I think that her only options are like 50 and 100. I don't think it allows 50,
Other
100, and fit to window.
Okay. And fit to window doesn't work for you?
I think that's what I had it on.
Okay.
That's what it was
Alright.
on.
Try
And then try what?
full. Try full. You just
Oh, it's
try-
now
try-
I'm not getting. Oh wait,
Okay,
full. What is full? I don't know what that is.
Oh,
there is
well,
no, yeah.
no, I thought that was an option. Sorry.
There's two views that you're actually looking at. You've got view options and then you've
Right.
got view. In view options, yeah, if you were gonna change the scale to 50% or I don't know what 100% original size looks to you.
Oh,
then-
that's worse. That's much worse.
Okay.
Um,
So can you read it at 50%? Is it big enough for you to read?
just a minute. I have to get back there. Yes, I can. I think I can. Mhm.
Okay, because otherwise I can change my screen here so that you can.
Okay, well, this is hopefully I will not be using this again, but it's interesting. Okay, I will read what I can. I will read this.
Okay.
In the rape of Persephone, the daughter of Ceres, it is said that she was the queen of the realms of Pluto. The beautiful figurative truth in this story seems to have been long lost sight of. A little penetration, however, will soon restore it. Ceres is acknowledged to mean the harvest. Her daughter Persephone was that portion of the harvest with which the farmer cropped his ground, who having hidden the grain within the furrow which is below the surface of the earth, it was therefore said that she was within the realms of Pluto. As the harvest is the richest treasure which we can have from the ground, the small portion which we hide below the surface may well be called the queen. Her name, Proserpina, so often mentioned by Ovid, is evidently corrupted from Persephone, i.e., the grain hidden, which is compounded of peri, seed or grain, and saphan, to hide, or saphaneth, the hidden, which make Persephone, which exactly agrees with the process of harvest and the tenor of the fable.
Thanks, Karen. Yeah, this book, Mythological Astronomy, deals a lot in the etymology of these early uh, titles, names, phrases, and can be really valuable for getting to the source of the meaning of these. Okay, so in his Initiates of Greece and Rome, Manly P. Hall expands on the idea that Persephone is an embodiment of the grain seed. MPH wrote a tremendous number of books, and often they are expansions on the kind of material that we cover in his secret teachings. So could we get a reader for this, please?
Yes. Lynn, can you read that for us, please?
Yes. There were rites sacred to Ceres, Persephone, Sabazius, Dionysus, Attis, Adonis, Mylitta, and Orpheus. Egypt contributed largely to the religious background of the whole Mesopotamian region, and Greek religion in particular. The civilized areas of North Africa evolved many of their religious doctrines as interpretations of their agricultural pursuits. The supreme mystery was the multiplication of life from the seed. All the great gods were connected with seed worship. The grain seed is buried in the earth, rises therefrom in due time, bestowing an abundant harvest. The tithing system originated in the ancient agrarian cults. Primitive nature worship was associated with the mystery of the great Mother Gaia, the earth. Into her, the seed must be planted, and from her, it will rise again. In some regions, human beings were buried in the embryo posture because death was to believe to be a second birth into the world beyond the grave. In this way, the sanctuary of initiation came to symbolize the womb of the Great Mother.
Thanks, Lynn. So, well, you can see the incredible focus and importance put on the grain and the harvest. At this time, it was, the primary source of food, and so the fact that there would be a goddess and an entire series of mythology connected with this is, not surprising at all. In Isis Unveiled, HPB identifies Persephone as the prototype of the Christian Mary, mother of Jesus. Could we get a reader for this, please?
Carrie, can you read that for us, please? Let me allow you. There we go. Now you should be able to unmute yourself.
So I just want to point out before you start, Carrie, that in both images, a very distinctive Mary is holding these sheaves of grain, which was, the province of Persephone. And so you can see the crossover here. The Christian church often did this. They would, they would opt symbols from goddesses and gods of earlier times in order to bring potency to this new religion of Christianity. Go ahead, Carrie. Thank you.
Okay. The sign and myth of the mother and child were known thousands of years before the Christian era. The drama of the mysteries of Demeter represents Persephonia, her daughter, as carried away by Pluto or Hades into the world of the dead. And when the mother finally discovers her there, she has been installed as queen of the realm of darkness. This myth was transcribed by the church into the legend of St. Anna going in quest of her daughter Mary, who has been conveyed by Joseph into Egypt. Persephone is depicted with 2 ears of wheat in her hand. So is Mary in the old pictures. So was the celestial virgin of the constellation. Albumazar, the Arabian, indicates the identity of the several myths as follows. In the first decan of the Virgin rises a maid, called in Arabic Adarenosa, that is, pure, immaculate virgin, graceful in person, charming in countenance, modest in habit, with loosened hair, holding in her hands 2 ears of wheat, sitting upon an embroidered throne, nursing a boy, and rightly feeding him in the place called Hebrea. A boy, I say, named Jesus by certain nations, which signifies Issa, whom they also call Christ in Greek.
Thank you, Carrie. So you can see that so much of what came to be known through Christian literature predated Christianity altogether, including this idea of the Virgin. Of course, we know that through Virgo, but even of the nursing boy, the savior Iesous, right? So any questions about this? All right, finally, we have Joseph Campbell in his definitive 4-volume Masks of God, reveals the many names by which this goddess was worshipped in countries surrounding the Mediterranean. Could we get a reader for this, please?
Yes, Scott, can you read that for us, please?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Let us press the question further. Can the Virgin Mary be the same as Venus Aphrodite, or as Cybele, Hathor, Ishtar, and the rest? We think of the words of the goddess Isis addressed to her initiate Apuleius around 150 AD, which are cited at the opening of primitive mythology. Quote, I am she that is the natural mother of all things, mistress and governess of all the elements, the initial progeny of worlds, chief of the powers divine, queen of all that are in hell, the principal of them that dwell in heaven, manifested alone and under one form of all the gods and goddesses. At my will, the planets of the sky, the wholesome winds of the seas, and the lamentable silences of hell are disposed. My name, my divinity, is adored throughout the world in diverse manners, in variable customs, and by many names. For the Phrygias, that are the first of all men, call me the mother of the gods of Pessinus. The Athenians, which are sprung from their own soil, Cecropian, Minerva. The Cyprians, which are gilt about by the sea, Paphian, Venus. The Cretans, which bear arrows, Dictynian, Diana. The Sicilians, which speak 3 tongues, infernal Persephone. The Eleusinians, their ancient goddess Ceres. Some Juno, others Bellona, others Hecate, others Rhamnusia, and principally both sorts of the Ethiopians, which dwell in the Orient and are enlightened by the morning rays of the sun, and the Egyptians, which are excellent in all kinds of ancient doctrine, and by their proper ceremonies accustomed to worship me, do call me by my true name, Queen Isis.
Thanks, Scott. Okay, and there's to the left there is a Greek form of Isis, and you can see the crossover with Persephone or Proserpina. And the advantage of knowing all these names is that when you're reading about these different mythologies and you come across these, you will have then additional information about this fundamental goddess, rather than imagining that there's this endless stream. And you see the unity of the ancient world around these gods and goddesses, right? You'll notice that Ceres and Persephone are 2 aspects of the same deity, which the Eleusinians chose to differentiate as mother and daughter, in my opinion, in order to articulate the mysteries, but they're often combined into one goddess. Okay, next up.
Francis?
Yeah.
I just wanted to say Anne Veronica says that, and I'm going to butcher this name, I'm sorry, Anne Veronica. Cecropia is the name of Athens before it was named Athens. And Minerva, if I remember well, is another name of Athens.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. And of course, Athens itself is named after Athena, which is not the same goddess, but certainly of the same hierarchy. So thank you for that. It's very interesting. Huh. Okay. Next up, we have Persephone's mother, which I've highlighted on the left there. Ceres Demeter. I just say it's Ceres in Greek. I mean Ceres in Rome and Demeter in Greek, which is in Egyptian Isis. So you could say she's the Greek Isis, on whom the greater mysteries focused. So the daughter was focused on, Persephone was focused on during the lesser mysteries. And then the shift, notice how femininely oriented these leading deities are for these mysteries, compared, for instance, to the Norse gods, which, any feminine roles were very much secondary. But here they're the primary figures. But anyway, so we have this Ceres Demeter was the focus of the greater mysteries. Can we get a reader for this, please?
Yes, I'm going to ask Christine, and she has a comment here. She wants to know what was the symbol in her hand. I think she means the prior slide.
We'll see if we can determine that. Oh, no, not that one, probably. Oh, yeah, it's a sistrum, which is it's like a shaker that gives you a tone or sounds a chord. And I think it also has a lot to do with sacred proportion in terms of the length of these. It's not really shown here with those wires, but I think in the original, it was that those strings were of a length that represented the sacred geometry of Pythagoras, who brought that geometry into music. Okay.
All right, Christine, can you read that for us? You need to unmute yourself. There you go.
There's only one word I can't see.
Okay. Well, read the rest of them.
Circe and Demeter and her earthly wanderings in search of her daughter are the euphemerized? What is that word?
Yeah, actually, I think there should be a P in there. Ephemerized. Ephemerized.
Feminine description of one of the, and then I don't know, metaphysical, psychological subjects ever treated by human mind. It is a mask for the transcendent narrative of the initiated seers. The celestial vision of the freed soul of the initiate of the last hour, describing the process by which the soul has not yet been incarnated, descends for the first time into matter. Quote, "Blessed is he who hath seen the common concerns of the underworld. He knows both the end of life and its divine origins from Jupiter," unquote, says Pindar. Now, is this Isis Unveiled 2?
No, Isis Unveiled, page 811.
No, I'm saying the first, there are two. The second one is about religion. The first is about...
That's the secret doctrine. Isis Unveiled is a unified volume?
I beg to differ from Theosophy. I have the second volume.
Okay, I have them.
So that's why
That's a
I'm
good
trying.
question. Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, I'm
So
searching
I
that.
can't tell you.
If I search the page, I may be in the wrong book, is what I'm saying.
Exactly, and I really can't answer you. You'd have to, because this is a unified edition that occurs as a PDF. So you know,
Okay, I appreciate that.
yeah, but you know what? While you're reading the second part, I'll pull my. Of course, you're right. It comes in 2 volumes. I'll pull my printed editions and see if I can find it for you. Go ahead.
Asclepius invokes her by the names of Eleusinian, Circes, Celestial Venus, Proserpina, and she answers him by a general explanation of these titles. I am, says she, nature, the parent of things, the sovereign of the elements, the primary progeny of time, the most exalted of the deities, the first of these heavenly gods and goddesses, the queen of the shades, the uniform countenance, who dispose with my nod and luminous heights of heaven the salubrious breezes of the sea and the mournful silence of the dead, whose single deity the whole world venerates in many forms, with various rites and many names, symbol of languages, ancient art and mythology.
Thank you. Okay. I'm almost certain that it's in the second volume because neither volume have this many pages. So my guess is, even though I can't tell you the page number, I can tell you that it's from the second volume.
Well, the page number obviously is here, but my volume is upstairs and it's very heavy, which means it's a tome.
Yeah, they are. Okay. Thank you for that. So, hold on a second. Yeah, here's an image of Demeter extending, which, meter, Ceres, the same, extending her hand in benediction towards the kneeling Matanira, queen of Eleusis, literal physical world queen of Eleusis, who offers the triune wheat, the scene from a red-figured Hydra. So with these three, Ceres, Demeter, Proserpina, Persephone, and Pluto, Hades, we have the 3 main characters of the lesser mysteries. The greater mysteries are briefly described in this excerpt from the Secret Societies of All Ages and Countries. Could we get a reader for this, please?
Yes, Martha, can you read that for us, please?
Yes, from the Mysteries to Apoptis. Like all other mysteries, the Eleusinian were divided into the greater and the lesser. And the latter, like the Bacchic and Cabiric rites, lasted 9 days and were merely preparatory, consisting of lustrations and sacrifices. The ceremonies of initiation into the greater mysteries were opened by the herald, exclaiming, "Retire, ye profane." The aspirant was presented naked to signify his total helplessness and dependence on Providence, after which he was clothed with the skin of a calf. An oath of secrecy was then administered, and he was asked, "Have you eaten bread?" The reply was no. Proserpine cannot return to the earth because she has eaten of the fruit of the infernal regions. Adam falls when he tastes of earthly fruit. I have drunk the sacred mixture. I have been fed from the basket of Ceres. I have labored. I have entered into the bed. That is to say, he had been placed in the pastos in which the aspirant for initiation was immured during the period of his probation. He was then made to pass through a series of trials, similar in character to those adopted in other mysteries, after which he was introduced into the inner temple, where he beheld the statue of the goddess Ceres, surrounded by a dazzling light. The candidate, who had heretofore been called a mystes or a novice, was now termed epoptes or eyewitness, and I can't read the
Secret doctrine was revealed. So a number of you are having trouble reading. I'm wondering why, when just by shifting platforms, this has come up. That's, I find, quite odd.
Is it all the just bottom part of the text
It
that's
would
people
seem
are
so.
having a problem?
It would
Are
seem,
you all in full screen? Are you all in full screen minimized windows?
yeah. How could we?
We don't seem to have the option. Our options are fit to window, 50%, 100%, 150, as Karen Griska said, but we don't have the option to full
Full
screen.
screen.
Well, if you double click the top bar, does it go into a minimized window?
No.
Martha, if you, in the view options, do you have a side-by-side mode?
They don't have the view options.
It's not,
They don't
that
have
would
you.
be under another, yeah, no.
Oh, okay.
Okay. What I would like you all to do is, if you're having this same problem, meaning that somehow the bottom of the screen is cut off, then either write a note describing it, or well, I suppose we could just have you raise your hand, because we don't really need information more than if the bottom of the screen is cut off. No other problems right now. Just if the bottom of your screen is cut off, raise your hand now. Okay, Vaughn Winiger, Martha Gallahue, Ann Peterson.
Okay, I'm getting some comments from them, and Yvonne says in full screen I can't see the bottom line, but I can in the smaller screen. And Joan says try hitting escape. That might take you out of the full screen mode. And Veronica says when I move my mouse, the bar at the bottom shows, and then I can't see the whole text.
Oh boy.
And Joan again says hitting escape takes you out of the full view.
Right, right. But that doesn't really solve the problem here.
We still have two hands up.
For those that are covered, is it because your toolbar is on the screen all the time? Or is it,
Good question.
do you hover over it? For the ones that it's not being seen, is your toolbar covering it? Is that what's happening? Or is it just cut off?
You understand?
It seems that the toolbar cuts it off.
Okay, you
Okay.
can move that toolbar.
I can, okay.
You can disable it from always being up,
Okay, how do we
or
do that?
you can move it.
How do we disable it?
If you go into your, that's the thing, you're gonna have to set this in meetings because you don't have video settings here.
Okay, this is something we're going to have to do for next time. I don't see us being able to get everybody. If you can, if you have the savvy to grab and move your toolbar, then that's one way. Just move it to another part of the screen. That doesn't really solve the problem, but it should only come on when you're hovering over it. That's the ideal setup. But again, is that a setting that we control, or is that something they control? Is that a setting that we control as the hosts, or does each attendee control?
It's there. It's on their end.
It's on their end. So
Yes.
okay, can you describe how to do that, or is that going to be too much for now?
Well, the thing is that them changing it because they don't have their video settings. I'm looking up the quick key for them to open their settings right now.
I see.
I've got more comments from him saying that I had the same issue with the bar, but after a short time, the bar goes away and the last line shows up. Anne says we can always go to the 50% screen, but then
It's not
the
ideal.
writing is really tiny.
No, that I'd prefer we don't have that as the final solution, because yeah,
Okay.
so often. Okay, we're going to work on this, folks. I mean, we expected to have some problems. There's no way that it would be totally seamless. So we'll figure out a way to communicate to you, maybe send it by separate email so that you can learn how to do this rather than try to figure it out now. Because as Michael says, we've disabled your video controls, so, and that's where this option is. Isn't that right, Michael?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll just hold off this time and figure out the best way to address this problem. So yeah, you just have to live with it for now. I'm sorry to those of you who have that bottom of the screen cut off. Now, is there anyone whose bottom of the screen is cut off and it's not because of the Zoom bar or the Zoom control bar? Anybody just have it cut off? Besides Karen, we know that that's a resolution problem. That would be true even in GoToMeeting. But anybody else? Okay, so it seems
I
like
have two hands up. Carrie's got his hand up and Anne has her hand up. Anne's had her hand up for a little while though. So I think that may have just been responding to when you asked earlier if they were having the same problem. Carrie, you're muted. Can you tell us what your problem is? Or did you just have a comment? You should be able to unmute yourself, Carrie.
Right. Can you
There
hear
you
me?
go. Yes.
there you are.
I found with this problem, if you put your pointer on the page itself, after a moment, the bottom line appears. Do
Okay.
you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
If
so
you
I'm
put your
doing it
pointer
now.
on the page, yeah, just leave it there a while and then suddenly the bottom appears.
Well, that's interesting. I
Well,
have no,
that's just because your toolbar will eventually recede. It'll eventually
Yeah.
fade out if you're set up normally. Some people are set up to always have their toolbar active, so it's never going to go
that's what
invisible.
we need to defeat is that. So like I said, we're going to have to address that for next time. Hopefully it won't be too big a problem. If it is, what I can do is come out of full screen mode and then lift the bottom up. Let's see what happens. See, the thing is, it doesn't resize.
I could share with you, those
No,
of you
that's
who
not going
have
to change.
smartphones, it does allow you to increase the size of the writing part of the screen. You can see the whole thing and you can actually navigate it with your fingers if you can't solve it on your laptop or desktop.
Okay, does this help you all who are having this problem? What I just did, because what I did is lifted it up.
Anne says yes.
Okay. Anyone else? It should solve this problem because basically I've decreased the screen by about, you know,
Yeah.
5%.
Other people are coming in saying, yes, it did. It helped.
Okay, well, that's a shame because I'd much prefer the full screen, but let's do this today. I'll use this today. Be nice if I could get rid of that bar at the top, but I never been able to do that. So we'll just continue this way. Well, we're bound to have had some problems with this, you know.
Okay, let me go to Anne. Anne, your hand is up. There you go. Did you have a question?
No, I think I raised the hand long before.
Okay, let's go on. Can we go on?
Okay, okay,
let's leave this
yes,
behind.
yes.
Go
Yes.
on.
This is our workaround now, and we'll send you an email. Can we do this, Michael? An email that explains
Yeah.
how to make this change, and then
Yeah.
maybe we can enable this function for next time so that you all can make this change. Because what's happening right now for me is not a solution I want to ultimately opt for. It just takes too much screen real estate away from the image and the writing. But onward. So next up, let's see. Oh no, come on. Does that just also disable my controls? Ay, ay, ay. How can I do this? Let me try it this way. Yep. All right. So the bas relief pictured here, which was also in the previous slide, is probably the most famous piece of surviving artwork from Eleusis. They actually found this in the temple. And it's now housed at the National Museum in Athens. I saw it decades ago when I was there. It's quite large and it's amazing. If this is, oh no, let's have a reader first. Can we get a reader, please, for this?
Yes. Scott, can you read that?
10 marble fragments of the great Eleusinian relief, circa 27 BC to AD 14. Demeter, the goddess of agricultural abundance, stands at the left, clad in a peplos and Himation cloak, and holding a scepter. At the right is Persephone, her daughter and the wife of Hades, the god of the underworld. She is dressed in a chiton and Himation. Each goddess extends her right hand toward a nude youth, but it is no longer possible to determine what they held. The boy is thought to be Triptolemus, who was sent by Demeter to teach men how to cultivate grain. On contemporary Athenian vases, he is usually shown as a bearded adult seated in a winged chariot, about to set out on his civilizing mission. The original marble relief was found in the sanctuary of Demeter at Eleusis, the site of the Eleusinian Mysteries. The original Greek work and a number of Roman copies survive. Here, the 10 Roman fragments are embedded in a cast of the Greek relief. Compared to the original, the execution of the hair and drapery in the copy is sharper, in accordance with the style current in Augustan art. This is the great scene of initiation, as I recall.
Yeah, that's how I see it as well. Yeah. And I actually question this interpretation. You know, remember that this is, you know, basically what appears below the fragment. If you were in the museum, it's very exoteric, right? And so attributing this figure to Triptolemos, I'm not sure why they've done that. If this is Triptolemos, he also represents all young aspirants presented for the lesser mysteries, as described here. Right? And from the previous slide, the aspirant was presented naked to signify his total helplessness and dependence on providence. So, yeah, any thoughts or questions on this? One of the great surviving artworks from Greece. Okay, back to the text. I think for the first time, this time, of the Secret Teachings, could we get a reader for this paragraph?
Yvonne, can you read that for us, please?
This isn't the first paragraph, by the way. We read through some last time. Go ahead.
The Ancient Mysteries and Secret Societies, Part 3. It is doubtful whether many of the initiates themselves understood the mystic meaning of this allegory, for most of them apparently believed that it referred solely to the succession of the seasons. It is difficult to obtain satisfactory information concerning the mysteries, for the candidates were bound by inviolable oaths never to reveal their inner secrets to the profane. At the beginning of the ceremony of initiation, the candidates stood upon the skins of animals sacrificed for the purpose and vowed that death should seal his lips before he would divulge the sacred truths which were about to be communicated to him. Through indirect channels, however, some of their secrets have been preserved.
Great, thank you. Any thoughts or questions about this paragraph? The allegory is, of course, the abduction of Persephone by Pluto and all that follows in that great myth. There are records of the consequences visited on those who broke their oaths of secrecy concerning the mysteries. For example, Hecathorn tells us, quote, Alcibiades, who was a famous Greek general and student of Socrates, but also a profligate, was banished and consigned to the Furies for having revealed the mysteries of Ceres. That would be the greater mysteries. Prometheus, Tantalus, Oedipus, and Orpheus suffered various punishments for the same reasons. Next up, could we get a reader, please?
Rosanna, can you read that for us, please?
The teachings given to the neophytes were substantially as follows. The soul of man, often called psyche, and in the Eleusinian Mysteries symbolized by Persephone, is essentially a spiritual thing. Its true home is in the higher worlds, where, free from the bondage of material form and material concepts, it is said to be truly alive and self-expressive. The human or physical nature of man, according to this doctrine, is a tome, a quagmire, a false and impermanent thing, the source of all sorrow and suffering. Plato describes the body as the sepulture of the soul, and by this he means not only the human form, but also the human nature.
Thoughts or questions? Let's take a closer look at the Greek concept of psyche or soul. In Isis Unveiled, HPB cites Plutarch. And my apologies to the 2-volume holders. I'm drawing from a 1-volume edition here, an online edition. This gives us a contemporaneous perspective on the nature of soul and its relationship to Persephone, Demeter, and Hades, because it's the words of Plutarch. So it will be as they believed, as their philosophers believed at any rate. So an extended reading, but worthwhile. Could we get a reader, please?
Karen, can you read that for us, please?
Okay. Man, says Plutarch, is compound, and they are mistaken who think him to be compounded of two parts only. For they imagine that the understanding is a part of the soul, but they err in this no less than those who make the soul to be a part of the body. For the understanding, nous, as far exceeds the soul, as the soul is better and diviner than the body. Now, this composition of the soul with the understanding, it's Greek to me, makes
Yeah,
the
me too.
reason and the body passion, of which one is the beginning or principle of pleasure and pain, and the other of virtue and vice. Of these three parts conjoined and compacted together, the earth has given the body, the moon the soul, and the sun the understanding to the generation of man. Now of the deaths we die, the one makes man 2 of 3, and the other 1 out of 2. The former is in the region of the and jurisdiction of Demeter, whence the name given to the mysteries resembled that given to death. The Athenians also heretofore called the deceased sacred to Demeter. As for the other death, it is in the moon or region of Persephone. And as with the one, the terrestrial, so with the other, the celestial Hermes doth dwell. This suddenly and with violence plucks the soul from the body, but Proserpina, mildly, and in a long time disjoins the understanding from the soul. For this reason she is called monogenes, only begotten, or rather begetting, one alone. For the better part of man becomes alone when he is separated by her. Now both the one and the other happens thus according to nature. It is ordained by faith that every soul, whether with or without understanding, when gone out of the body, should wander for a time, though not all for the same, in the region of lying between the earth and moon. For those who have been unjust and dissolute suffer there the punishment due to their offenses. But the good and virtuous are there detained till they are purified and have by expiation purged out of them all the infections they might have contracted from the contagion of the body, as if from foul health, living in the mildest part of the air, called the meadows of Hades, where they must remain for a certain prefixed and appointed time, and then as if they were returning from a wandering pilgrimage or long exile into their country, they have a taste of joy such as they principally receive who are initiated into the sacred mysteries, mixed with trouble, admiration, and each one's proper and peculiar hope.
Okay, thanks, Karen. And so this whole thing basically is this Plutarch quote. Any thoughts or questions about this? Many of these ideas align with theosophical thought, though there are a few significant differences. A key phrase for determining the Greek hierarchy of consciousness is, as I have it on the screen, quote, understanding, nous, as far exceeds the soul, as the soul is better and diviner than the body. In Greek thought, nous is enlightened spiritual intelligence, or buddhimanas. It can also mean universal mind. For example, Pymander says, the light is me. I am the nous the mind or Manu. I am thy God, and I am far older than the human principle, which escapes from the shadow. Platonic philosophy speaks of the human soul, psyche, represented by the moon, as able to ally itself either with the solar divine mind, nous, or with lunar passion, thymos, equivalent to the theosophical buddhi manas and kama manas.
Francis?
Yeah.
You just touched on it when you said that another definition of nous was the universal mind, but Anne Veronica, our resident Greek attendee, she did say nous equals mind.
Yes, and so you have universal mind and you have the mind of man, and you have the great, which is the reason there's such a focus on it is because it's the seat of consciousness, right? And so you have universal consciousness by means of Fohat, for you SD secret doctrine attendees, which by means of Fohat and the vehicle of Manas, mind is impressed upon matter, right? And that's why there's such a focus on this idea of nous in the Greek. Let's see here. So HPB says, thus here again, divine spirit is symbolized by the sun or fire, divine soul by water and the moon, both standing for the father and mother of pneuma, human soul, or mind, symbolized by the wind or air, for pneuma means breath. Buddhi, the source of mind, has air as its element. Okay, so here again, you see a particular definition of the human soul, mother of pneuma, human soul or mind, which is often symbolized by the element of air, okay, or breath. So when the psyche identifies with nous or reason, the union of buddhi and manas is achieved. Next, Plutarch assigns the body to the earth, the soul to the moon, and understanding or nous to the sun. This phrase, now of the deaths we die, the one makes man two of three, of course, describes physical death, which Plutarch associates with the terrestrial realm of Demeter. Once the body is discarded, three become two, psyche and nous. The second death, wherein the two become one, is represented by Persephone's re-merging with Hermes. That's why she seeks a second death. Could we get a reader for this, please?
Yes. And Veronica, can you read that for us, please?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Before I read this, I was thinking that you were saying this, the first death, the second and the third death. I was thinking of the permanent atoms, which when dying, they get all the best of the life, go in the permanent atoms. And then there is, I thought I was talking it with you, a movement that the permanent atoms go into the soul. So I was thinking it's like as we put the seed in the earth until it grows again. I was thinking of that movement of the permanent atoms when the person dies. It's
That's
like seeds that goes into the soul to be born again, I guess.
Yeah, well, if you remember that famous chart It's given in the decay material. I think it's page 117 of a treatise on cosmic fire. You have, this 7-level chart, and the permanent atoms and the mental unit are all described there at
Yes,
various
I was talking
levels.
about those three, the two
Right.
permanent elements and the mental unit. Those go into the soul.
Yeah, and they're not in that chart. They're shown as separate from the soul, but they're also shown with these connected lines to them. And I think that has to do with the process of discarnating, and then the process of reincarnating, where it's you could say left, in the permanent atoms before one is purely absorbed, losing all separative identity that was described during that incarnation back into the soul. And then that is picked up again once reincarnation reensues. So yeah, but it's an interesting distinction.
Okay.
So go ahead, please.
But after a certain time, the nous aspires to descend to its fountain head, the sun, whereupon Persephone, with her colleague, the celestial Hermes, separates it with gentleness and by slow degree from the grosser psyche, soul. This is the second death. The vows flying up to the sun, but the psyche remains in the moon in a dreamy sort of existence until gradually absorbed into a substance, exactly as the earth gradually absorbs into herself the remains of the body. The Gnostics and their remains.
Thank you. It's maybe the first time that anybody's actually read the native Greek in one of my webinars. When you read Psyche from that. Yeah.
I wasn't right because I saw a K there, it's psyche. I saw a K and I tried to do what I saw there, but the right word we say is psyche.
Thank you for that. That's great.
And I just want to say, Carsten says the soul has 3 members in Rudolf Steiner's system. The lowest is the sentient soul, the bearer of our passions and desires. The next highest is the intellectual soul, which lets us be rational, and the highest is the consciousness soul.
Right, which is the equivalent to the soul on its own plane. And the informing soul is that level of consciousness. And then there's the soul of the form aspect, which is the sentient. Okay, so Plutarch describes this as, quote, Proserpina. This, what I'm describing here is the second death. Proserpina, remember, who is Persephone? It's just the Roman Persephone. Mildly and during a long time disjoined the understanding or nous from the lunar soul. Because she oversees this final stage of reunion, she is called monogenes, which here means begetting one alone. Following this is the passage describing one's experience after physical death, which results in karmic suffering and purification, the latter taking place in the, quote, meadows of Hades. So any thoughts or questions on this Plutarch quote? Really gives us insight into the Greek understanding of that time. The main variant from theosophical thought is that the Greek soul or psyche was understood to be a lunar being, meaning associated with the moon specifically, the animating life principle during incarnation, rather than the theosophical personification of the solar principle, which in Greek thought was reserved for nous, or the sun, representing triadal consciousness and beyond. And this concept of lunar psyche, I see some correspondence to the Gnostic Pistis Sophia, who was trapped in an eon or spiritual region beneath her true home, as shown here. Quote, and Pistis Sophia cried out most exceedingly. She cried to the light of lights, which she had seen from the beginning, and uttered this repentance: save me, O light, for evil thoughts have entered into me. Let's take a closer look at the enigmatic Persephone, the goddess who oversees the soul's ascent. Could we get a reader for this, please?
Lynn, can you read that for us, please?
Yes. The fable of Proserpina, who, as her name indicates, was the goddess of destruction, is fabled to have sprung from Jupiter and Ceres, the most general personifications of the creative powers. Hence, she is called Kor, the universal daughter, or general secondary principle. For though properly the goddess of destruction, she is frequently distinguished by the title Sotiera, savior and preserver, and represented with ears of corn upon her head as goddess of fertility. She was in reality the personification of the heat or fire supposed to pervade the earth, which was held to be at once the cause and effect of fertility and destruction, as being at once the cause and effect of fermentation, from which both proceed. The mystic concealment of her operation was expressed by the black veil or bandage upon her head, which was sometimes dotted with asterisks, whilst the hair which it enveloped was made to imitate flames.
Thank you, Lynn. So Persephone symbolized the motive force, the quote, fire pervading the earth, which is responsible for birth, death, and regeneration. That's why she's also considered the agent of destruction. Exoterically, this was seen just simply as the yearly harvest. In fact, I think the exoteric understanding of this entire myth was along those lines, right? But esoterically, the psyche, the Greek lunar soul of humanity. Okay, any thoughts or questions about this?
Yes, Anne Veronica has said that pistis equals faith and Sophia equals wisdom.
Right, the face of wisdom.
Faith is in, I have faith that.
Oh, the faith. Oh,
Right.
oh, that does change it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So faith and wisdom. Yeah, it's like
Or faith in wisdom.
yeah, it could be that. Yeah. But you have these two principles connected there. Thanks for that, Anne Veronica. You are showing yourself to be really invaluable, especially during these Greek studies. So thank you for this. Okay, next up, next paragraph. Could we get a reader, please? Just, you don't have to read the top title. That's just to show you where we are. Just starting with the gloom.
Carrie, can you read that for us, please?
Gloom and depression of the lesser mysteries represented the agony of the spiritual soul, unable to express itself because it has accepted the limitations and illusions of the human environment. The crux of the Eleusinian argument was that man is neither better nor wiser after death than during life. If he does not rise above ignorance during his sojourn here, man goes at death into eternity to wander about forever, making the same mistakes which he made here. If he does not outgrow the desire for material possessions here, he will carry it with him into the invisible world, where, because he can never gratify the desire, he will continue in endless agony. Dante's Inferno is symbolically descriptive of the sufferings of those who never free their spiritual natures from the cravings, habits, viewpoints, and limitations of their plutonic personalities. Those who made no endeavor to improve themselves, whose souls have slept during their physical lives, passed at death into Hades, where, lying in rows, they slept through all eternity as they had slept through life.
Thank you, Carrie. So here's a map and a couple of illustrations of Dante's Inferno. Exoterically, the Christian hell and an instrument of punishment, but esoterically, a symbol for the halls of ignorance and a means for gaining experience. MPH makes no mention of a belief in reincarnation, thus forwarding the untenable idea, also expressed later in Christianity, that we have only one chance to get it right, to learn the needed lessons. And if you don't do it, then you're going to be lying in rows with the shades in Hades, right? I suspect that reincarnation was known and taught, and probably one of the secrets given in the mystery school. At what point, I don't know. I would think it'd be a basic teaching, but it's not described here.
Francis, Scott's got his hand up. Go ahead, Scott.
Yep.
This is reflected in what the Tibetan says. I found it really interesting. It's in the compilation on death book. He talks about this very real situation where, as described here, is when you die, you do not change. You are still you. You continue to go on. You don't gain or lose anything. You're just, it's still you. You're still in a consciousness that is learning. This corresponds really directly to what he says, with the exception, as you note, of course, that there's reincarnation, which is not, was clearly a secret that was not talked about. But otherwise, this conforms to directly what he says about.
It's true. It's very theosophical. And in that way, it departs from the usual Christian understanding that, you're, as soon as you enter heaven, you take on a much higher awareness. But
well, that's part of his teaching too, but at a much higher level, when the human soul reunites with the truly divine soul. That's where that kind of
right. That's where the expansion takes place. Yeah, which is, it's detailed in the fact of the second death of Persephone. That idea of reunion with the soul, and it is sort of glaringly absent this fact of reincarnation. But I think just given everything else that's described and how much subtlety there is in the teaching, that it's sort of glaringly absent as a result of that. So
DK speaks of it as the second death as well. It's really quite.
Oh, interesting. Does he now? Okay.
These terms.
Interesting.
And so this is a leakage, perhaps,
Right.
Opening of higher teaching and mysteries.
Yeah, a leakage, meaning that somebody reveals some aspect of the mysteries.
That somebody got it and brought it in and somehow.
Yeah. There's an interesting story about Socrates, which is that he wouldn't go through this process because what he was already teaching were the greater mysteries, and he would be then sworn to secrecy and wouldn't be able to teach.
Exactly.
Yes, that's
why he drank his potion, because he knew what was going on, what was not an initiate. He was teaching those teachings, but not deliberately.
Right, not within the system.
He was not bound by the
the oath of secrecy. Okay. So any thoughts or questions? Let's see, where am I here? Okay, next up. Could we have a reader for this, please?
Martha, can you read that for us, please?
Yes. The Ancient Mysteries and Secret Societies, Part 3. It is doubtful whether many of the initiates themselves understood the mystic meaning of the allegory. For most of them apparently believed that it referred solely to the succession of the seasons. It is difficult to obtain satisfactory information concerning the mysteries, for the candidates were bound by inviolable oaths never to reveal their inner secrets to the profane.
Wait a minute.
Oh,
You're reading from the very top.
okay. Where is
Just start with the Eleusinian philosophers.
okay.
By the way, and this is to everyone, the gray is just to kind of show you where we are. I'll never be asking you to read gray text. It's a placeholder.
Thank you, Mike Francis. To the Eleusinian philosophers, birth into the physical world was death in the fullest sense of the word, and the only true birth was that of the spiritual soul of man rising out of the womb of his own fleshly nature. The soul is dead that slumbers, says Longfellow, and in this he strikes the keynote of the Eleusinian Mysteries. Just as Narcissus, gazing at himself in the water, the ancients used this mobile element to symbolize the transitory, illusionary material universe, lost his life trying to embrace a reflection. So man, gazing into the mirror of nature and accepting as his real self the senseless clay that he sees reflected, loses the opportunity afforded by physical life to unfold his immortal, invisible self.
Thank you, Martha. So you can see here, we get a little peek under the hood here as to, one of the not deeply esoteric, but nonetheless esoteric meanings of one of the myths, which has to do with Narcissus and gazing at his reflection and therefore losing his sense of self. Okay. Referencing the birth of the soul from the tomb of incarnated life, we have these two passages. Could we get a reader, please?
Rosanna, can you read that for us, please?
The knowledge of the perfect man is very deep and hard to be attained to. The beginning of perfection is the knowledge of man, but absolute perfection is the knowledge of God. He, Adamus, is designated by the Phrygians as the green wheat ear cut off. On this account, at the Eleusinian rites, the initiated hold up in silence to the directors the wondrous mystery, the green ear of wheat. This wheat ear is the perfect sun descended from the Adamus above, the great giver of light, like the Hierophant himself. You will note that the applicant eventually arrives at knowledge and begins to know. The disciple or the initiate starts with knowing, and through his ability to express esoterically that which he knows, is able to reveal the light, and by that light to destroy all illusion, glamour, and Maya. He brings about resurrection upon the physical plane, a resurrection from the death which physical plane life inevitably confers.
Yeah, and that's from DK's teachings, Race and Initiations. Any thoughts or questions about this?
Aunt Veronica tells us that Adamus equals diamond. in Greek.
Really? How?
Or is that right, Anne Veronica? Is it diamond?
Diamond, yes, adamas. Adamas means diamond.
Oh, interesting. Well,
Thank
you
you.
can see the relationship. Um, the highest form of the mineral kingdom, you know, the perfect one, and the idea of Adamas, meaning the essence of the you know, the human. It's very much connected with Manu, this idea Adamas, and you know, it's an alliteration of Manas too. You can see in that. Of course, it means the first one, right?
So could Adam be a paraphrase of Adamas, meaning the first one, the perfect?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. Yeah. It's so so the first is the green wheat ear cut off, you know, that essence of, and we'll be reading a little later on about where they have a ceremony where they make a figure of a, a figure from Cirrus, of this wheat ear, of Cirrus, I should say, of this wheat ear, and then they adore that figure. It's quite interesting, and that happens way later. But I'm getting ahead of myself now. So
Shriyanta says that its highly refined consciousness is also represented as a diamond soul.
well, perfect. Yeah, that's good. That's actually what I was intuiting, trying to come to, is that understanding. Yeah, highly refined consciousness is diamond-like. Yeah. Okay, next up, can we get a reader, please?
Yes. I just have to find one. Yeah,
That's your job.
yeah, I know. Yvonne, can you read that for us, please?
Yes, Francis, I had a question on the last picture. What was the significance of the two snakes?
Oh, well, it's always, the ascension is always between the pairs of opposites, which are represented by these two serpents of wisdom. You often see, for instance, Heru or Hercules holding snakes in either hand, right? Sometimes two in either hand, suggesting that he has, in this case, Persephone, has transcended the binding realm of the pair of opposites, right? She has him in hand, so to speak. And this, of course, the wheat always represents this rebirth of consciousness. In a sense, both symbols represent that. One in form, one in as consciousness.
And Veronica says Ida and Pingala.
Oh, yeah, interesting. Yeah, with the central channel then being
If she's transcended these pairs of opposites, she's what, getting ready to take the third initiation? She's taken the first and second?
Well, the second is very particularly the realm of moving from glamour, the pair of opposites of glamour, and then the third, the pairs of opposites that are represented in illusion, you know, which are all subject-object thought forms. In other words, the entire lower mind, right? So yes, you're right. It's a second, third initiate kind of place.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And Veronica says that the snakes were thought to be healing in ancient Greece.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I need to read about the specific properties, the healing properties of the snake. Okay. Could we get a reader?
Yes. The Ancient Mysteries and Secret Societies, Part 3. An ancient initiate once said that the living are ruled by the dead. Only those conversant with the Eleusinian concept of life could understand that statement. It means that the majority of people are not ruled by their living spirits, but by their senseless, hence dead, animal personalities. Transmigration and reincarnation were taught in these mysteries, but in a somewhat unusual manner. It was believed that at midnight, the invisible worlds were closest to the terrestrial sphere, and that souls coming into material existence slipped in during the midnight hour. For this reason, many of the Eleusinian ceremonies were performed at midnight. Some of those sleeping spirits who had failed to awaken their higher natures during the earth life and who now floated around in invisible worlds, surrounded by a darkness of their own making, occasionally slipped through at this hour and assumed the forms of various creatures.
Thank you. So any thoughts or questions about this?
Yeah, we have a couple of comments from Karsten, but before I get to that, Anne Veronica wants to know what transmigration means.
That means from one kingdom to another, like from the, often, for instance, from the human to the animal kingdom or vice versa. You're migrating trans from one to another, right?
And then Karsten says that he wants to know he wants to know about the connection between Shambhala, hierarchy, and humanity. And he thinks that the god Adamus may be Shambhala.
Well, in one sense, I tend to connect it a lot with the idea of Manu, the great archetype of human form life, including the higher forms, in accordance with what is appropriate for the root races of that time. This is an as above, so below kind of teaching, and it's also that connection between the first principle and first ray and the seventh plane and the seventh ray, which is that it reflects into the form aspect, the ideal or the archetypal, right? And so in that sense, it's shambolic. Yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts or questions about this paragraph? The lesser mysteries were oriented to a true understanding of terrestrial life, or as Knight states in his symbolical language of ancient art and mythology, which we've been quoting all through this, the female or passive powers of production supposed to be inherent in matter, right? And so that's the orientation of the lesser mysteries. In fact, according to Hippolytes, the term Eleusinian, thai, Thai, Lucis thai, means to descend into earthly existence, which is facilitated, MPH tells us, interestingly, at the midnight hour. The term Anactorion, associated with the greater mysteries, indicates one's return to the solar, spiritual realms of light. There's an interesting reference here to spirits who, quote, assumed the forms of various creatures at the midnight hour. Thomas Taylor expands on this phenomena. Could we get a reader, please?
Joan, can you read that for us, please?
For the mysteries, as is well known, were celebrated by night. And in the Republic of Plato, souls are described as falling into the estate of generation at midnight. This period being peculiarly accommodating to the darkness and oblivion of a corporeal nature. And to this circumstance, the nocturnal celebration of the mystery doubtless alluded. In the next place, the following vivid description presents itself to our view. In the midst, an elm, dark and huge, expands its boughs and aged limbs, making an abode which vain dreams are said to haunt, and under whose every leaf they dwell. Besides all these are many monstrous apparitions of various wild beasts. The centaurs harbor at the gates, and double-formed Scyllas, the hundredfold Briareus, the snake of Lerna, hissing dreadfully, and Chimera, armed with flames, the Gorgus and the Harpies, and the shades of three-bodied forms.
Thank you. So here are some images of these, quote, monstrous apparitions. The centaurs seem to be the least monstrous, at least because of their particular type of connection with humanity. The Scyllas, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, which were kind of dragon-tailed beast of sorts. I could find no Greek image of the, quote, hundredfold Briareus, going back looking at old Greek stuff. You can see why it'd be pretty difficult. But this contemporary image seems to me an adequate representation. The snake of Lerna, made famous by its fateful encounter with Heracles. Chimera, or Chimera, I'm not sure. The Gorgus, or Gorgons, made famous by Medusa. The Harpies. These bird-like creatures. You see more of the upper indication. The lower seem just like winged, more like angels, like winged people, but the upper is fully bird-like except for the heads. It's more my understanding anyway of what a harpy is. And finally, the quote, shades of the three-bodied form, which was the giant Geryon. Whenever you look for a three-bodied form, and of course it's it's barely veiled idea of the physical, astral, mental, and that's the true shades of the giant, right? Okay. Let's see, we have time for one more read. Can we get a reader, please?
Carrie, can you read that for us, please?
The mystics of Eleusis also laid stress upon the evil of suicide, explaining that there was a profound mystery concerning this crime of which they could not speak, but warning their disciples that a great sorrow comes to all who take their own lives. This, in substance, constitutes the esoteric doctrine given to the initiates of the lesser mysteries. As the degree dealt largely with the miseries of those who failed to make the best use of their philosophic opportunities, the chambers of initiation were subterranean, and the horrors of Hades were vividly depicted in a complicated ritualistic drama. After passing successfully through the tortuous passageways with their trials and dangers, the candidate received the honorary title of Mystes. This meant one who saw through a veil or had a clouded vision. It also signified that the candidate had been brought up to the veil, which would be torn away in the higher degree. The modern word mystic, as referring to a seeker after truth according to the dictates of the heart along the path of faith, is probably derived from this ancient word. For faith is belief in the reality of things unseen or veiled.
Thank you, Carrie. So, converse to what we might imagine, suicide. Let me get back here. suicide can become a problem even during certain stages on the path of return. Could we get a reader for this short DK quote?
Okay, I'll read it. I would have you appreciate the extent of the task a man undertakes when he consciously sets about ridding himself of glamour preparatory to extended service. He is in conflict then with the whole glamour of the entire planet and is apt to be overwhelmed by a realization of what he is facing. This is one of the causes of the deep depression and those profound inferiority complexes which render some people completely futile or lead eventually to suicide. Their own personal glamours tie them into a national or planetary glamour and thus condition their life expression in their thinking.
Thank you, BL. As to the quote, profound mystery and great sorrow that comes to all who take their own lives, we have this chilling passage, and we'll end with this, from volume 9 of Blavatsky's collected writings. Could we get a reader, please?
Scott, can you read that for us, please?
Then there is a class which are really not dead, such as suicides and sudden deaths, and highly wicked people. Elementals enter into all of them, thus get a fictitious personality and intelligence, wholly the property of the shell. They galvanize the shell into action, and by its means can see and hear as if beings themselves, like us. The shells are, in this case, just like a sleepwalking human body. Through habit, they will exhibit the advancement they got while in the flesh.
Yikes. So, if you need a reason not to go this route, there's yet another one, right? These elementals literally enter in and reanimate this shell. It's really chilling stuff. Okay, I'm sorry to leave you on that note, but it guarantees that we'll start on a very positive note next time. And until then, we will attempt to solve this problem of the of this little menu bar that pops up from Zoom.
Francis.
And how to, yeah.
We could go through that if everyone that's having it, are you able to see your microphone? Everyone who's having the issue where you can't see.
Here, why don't I stop the recording right now, and then we can do a little bit of that.
Okay, hang on. Let's first of all finish up with dates, and then those who are affected, can stay on. Otherwise, you can sign off, and then we'll see you. And we'll give out the dates now. I think it's 2 weeks for Secret Doctrine.
Right, it is. The Secret Doctrine is the 17th of January, and it's a new link. So, but that information is out there. You should all have it. And if you don't, you can email me. And then the next STOA is going to be on the 7th of February. Okay,
good. Which is right, going to be, I think, a 3-week interval there between those two. But anyway, 2 weeks to the Secret Doctrine. And so if you're not affected by this problem, then we'll see you next time. And if you are and you want to hang around for a little bit, or you're just curious, then stay on and we'll see what we can do about describing a way out of this problem. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Real
everyone.
privilege to be part of this and to host this. So thanks for being part of this. I'm going to end with, give you a better image to end with.